Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you, and thanks, Karen, for your wonderful inspiration and leadership over the years. You're changing the world. Keep it up. Well, I'm really delighted to be here with you guys today and talk about a favorite topic of mine, compassion. I happen to be a businessman who just happens to be mayor right now, and I say to be a good mayor, you have to have the head of a chief executive and the heart of a social worker, because everybody's on the city team, so to speak. It's not like business where you can select who your customers are and who your suppliers are. And so when I was first elected 4 years ago this month, I detailed a path forward in my inaugural address where I wanted to emphasize three overarching pillars for our administration. The first pillar would be a city of lifelong learning, because that leads to innovation, good jobs, great opportunity for our citizens. The second was a city of health. Not just physical health, but mental health, environmental health, and spiritual health. And the third was, how can we be an even more compassionate city? And this is the one that really caught people for surprise. They're saying, what's a business guy that's now our mayor talking about compassion? And then the political pundits, so-called pundits, said, don't talk about compassion, it makes you sound weak. And I said, au contraire. It is much more difficult for people to be compassionate than it is to be cynical or a skeptic on the couch, because compassion requires action and interdependence and getting engaged. And I said, please don't call me a politician either. It's not the best connotation. Just said, I'm a public servant, I'm an elected official, and compassion should be something that we all do day in and day out. So, we've had some success in this area, but it's a journey. There is no end zone to compassionate city where you say, we're done, now we move on to the next thing. The goal, obviously, is to develop these goals of lifelong learning, health, and compassion into just the default mechanisms of who we are. We're the first large American city to sign the Charter for Compassion. We passed it with the Metro Council resolution 3 years ago on November the 11th, 2011. This was a really critical step in the journey to me because it was a public declaration with all 26 members of the council voting for it, where we talked about this with the city. A partnership has been called Compassionate Louisville. It grew out of our 10-year commitment. We pull together schools, nonprofits, faith-based institutions, banks, food banks, women's shelter. We all come together to jointly promote and practice compassion in our community. And the lead host of our partnership is here, Tom Williams. Tom is somewhere in the audience here. He's the one waving in the middle, so if you want to know about starting your own compassionate community, please get with Tom. One of our universities, Spalding University in Louisville, was the first university to become a school of compassion. And of course, we were named an international model city of compassion as well. All these things are important because just people keep hearing compassion, kindness, love. And they wonder, and as they do with most any elected official, are they going to keep talking about this, or is this just a press release? Is this something they're really serious about? We talk about compassion every day, and I give a lot of speeches, so I talk about it multiple times every day. It's important for people to see this is who we are. It's the one thing that I talk about that everybody agrees on. Doesn't matter what your political persuasion is, your religious persuasion, where you come from, what you look like, everybody nods their head when I talk about compassion. I certainly didn't create compassion in our city. Our history with compassion goes back a lot further than me. Thomas Merton from the Abbey of Gethsemane in Bardstown area, it's about 40 minutes outside of Kentucky, outside of Louisville, is one of our great heroes. I should also note that Bardstown is right in the center of bourbon country. And Thomas Merton was known to like a sip of bourbon or two. And I'm going to give a plug for you all visiting our city right now. We've created a word called bourbonism. And bourbonism is the act of visiting Kentucky to enjoy bourbon and our great local food scene. So please come and enjoy bourbon. Also be aware that there are many people right now that are trying to steal bourbon from us. 95% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky, and the other 5% is counterfeit. So stay away from that. Now, Thomas Merton spent a lot of time in our city, and he had his world-famous epiphany. Some of y'all, I'm sure, are Merton fans. He had his epiphany in the middle of our hustling and bustling downtown at the corner of 4th and Walnut Streets, and now it's 4th and Muhammad Ali Streets. And I always got a kick. Here's a guy having an epiphany in the middle of Louisville. You can have an epiphany anywhere, I guess, Karen, so why not the center of Louisville? But what he did was, he's a guy that thought about the big picture. How are we all connected? So here he was looking out over the shopping district of our city, and it hit him how we're all connected. And his quote was, "If only we could see each other that way all the time," he said. "There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed." And then he wanted to shout it out and tell everybody that, but he said, it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. So think about that image as you look at our brothers and sisters all around our cities in the world and look at them shining like the sun. What a beautiful image, and that's what he saw on that day in 1958. And so I've discussed this epiphany all over Louisville, in cathedrals, temples, synagogues, conversation with Dalai Lama when he came to town. And I think it really tells you something about our city. We're the home of the Southern Baptist Seminary, the denominational headquarters of Presbyterian Church USA. And I frequently talk with Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and all secular organizations about the epiphany of a Trappist monk on a street named for an Islamic boxer, Muhammad Ali, the Louisville Lip, who's now a world messenger of peace at the same time. So this is part of our city. We're a city that understands our similarities are certainly greater than our differences. We call it many faiths, one heart. This is part of our city's DNA. Our Center for Interfaith Relations, and Owsley Brown is here with us, who's a great leader with our Center for Interfaith Relations. We just held our 19th Festival of Faiths earlier this year, one of the great interfaith gatherings in the world. And it's an event that not only celebrates the commonality of different religions and faiths, but the action that should result from that. One of the things and one of the cautions from conferences like this is we all leave feeling good. But the question is, what are we going to do? How do we spread this in a meaningful way throughout our cities? One of the ways that we do that is with a signature compassion program that we called Give a Day. Started that 4 years ago, the first year of my administration. It's a week of service in April. We received the U.S. Conference of Mayors Most Livable City Award for this program. And this past year, we topped 144,000 volunteers during this week out of our city of 750,000. Now, we set a new goal, 750,000. People say, I say, why not? Each one of our citizens should be able to do one act of compassion or love. And for our youngest citizens, that's what they do naturally anyway. So this is part of engaging everyone in this compassionate movement in our city. I have fun with it. As a mayor, I was very uncomfortable the first couple of months being a mayor when I would issue proclamations. I think to myself, who am I to be issuing these proclamations? Now I really like it. So after the first Give a Day week, I proclaimed that we were the most compassionate city on the face of the earth. And I was waiting for somebody to challenge me about that. Nobody challenged me. We started getting all these awards because of this. So every year I repeat that proclamation, and I invite other cities, if they want to challenge us, that we will help them become the most compassionate city themselves, because that's what compassionate people do. Now, compassion is more than just empathy, right? And I think looking at compassion as just empathy or the relieving of suffering of others really limits our potential to scale the number of people that are interested when you put a word out like compassion. Words are important, how we use words, the connotations that they have. To us, compassion is not just a feeling, it's a platform that we're building together in our city, so all citizens have a firm footing in a solid place to launch from to reach their full human potential. Okay, so compassion for us is respecting each one of our citizens so that we want their human potential to flourish and to thrive. So think about that, living in a community where everybody's potential is on full display every day, flourishing and thriving. And I think in a certain degree, that's probably what Thomas Merton meant when he saw everyone walking around shining like the sun. This meaning of compassion has really helped us expand, especially into the business community. Any decent business wants their employees to thrive so that they can succeed with whatever the mission they're doing, nonprofits, faith-based institutions as well. So think about compassion in a more proactive sense. We began to talk about creating a center for compassionate cities, which would be a showcase, an operations center, a consulting service that promotes and collects the toolbox for compassion, the tools that we use in our community and other communities use around the country, so we could teach other cities how to be compassionate cities. Owsley Brown, who I mentioned here earlier, is a Louisville native who splits his time between Louisville and San Francisco, has been an important leader in this initiative. Out of the work in our conversation together and collaborating with the University of Virginia and the Contemplative Sciences Center there, we're about to launch a Compassionate Schools project that we're very excited about. This will be a long-term, controlled, far-reaching, first of its kind in the universe on how to teach a compassion curriculum to make kids more resilient, help them on their path to achieve their potential. Our Jefferson County Public Schools, which has about 100,000 students in it, will be partnering with the University of Virginia's Curry School of Education to launch this project next semester in 3 schools as a pilot for grades K to 5. Then we're going to quickly ramp up to 25 schools after that. 25 in a control group, 25 in the actual curriculum itself. In each of these schools, we'll be implementing a curriculum centered on social and emotional coping skills, nutrition, wellness, and mindfulness. So the goal is for kids to learn how to self-regulate both their body and their mind and become more effective learners at the same time. I'm really thrilled about this project. We want this to be a gold standard, not just for research itself, but also then for scalability around the world. We all see lots of examples of stuff that work on the one-on-one or individual basis. The challenge is for us to be able to scale, and that's what we hope this curriculum will prove, and then we'll have it ready for the world to use. We're now, for my second unshameful plug here, we're now in an active fundraising mode for this project. The curriculum has been created. It's ready to go. We will be raising $11 million for the project. If you're interested or know anybody that might be interested in a project like this, to help out, because we do feel like once this is proven, if it is in fact scalable, we'll then have something that can change the way we see education in the world. Our compassion project our compassion efforts is not starting with the education project though. We make significant investments in making the lives of our students better. We agree with Frederick Douglass. It's easier to grow strong children than it is to repair broken adults. So we launch all sorts of initiatives around this, from expanded community center hours, programming with Louisville Metro Police Department, Jefferson County Public Schools. I'll give you just one example of how deep we're going into the community. Unfortunately, violence is part of every city. Imagine if you're a kid in a home that is not a functional home. You've witnessed violence, domestic violence. You've been up all night because somebody's been yelling at your mother, and you're expected to go to school the next day and perform well. And if you don't, a teacher or somebody at the school is going to become questioning you. You might be in trouble. So we've linked police reports of problems in homes with notifying Jefferson County Public Schools that, hey, maybe Betsy's going to have a tough day today. Daquan experienced something last night that wasn't really pleasant. Give him a little space, give him a little support in the community. So as we've built our compassionate community, these are the type of ideas that people come up with and we integrate into what we do every day. We put a big emphasis on mentors. We're placing 500 at-risk youth right now in a program called Right Turn. When you ask the community for mentors, you get varied response. I wanted to make sure that we at city government were leading the way with this, so we created something called Metro Mentors. We have 6,000 employees. Each employee now can spend 2 hours a week mentoring a young child in the community. I felt like it was important that we walk the talk. One of my favorite programs is the Gentleman's Academy. This is a 6-week camp for at-risk 14 to 18-year-old young men. One of the biggest takeaways they tell us from the 6-week experience is what they learn about mindfulness and meditation. The first week they're in, they're like, oh, this isn't cool, and these are tough kids. After week 6, it's the #1 thing that they take away with them, the relaxation mat, and they tell us it's the first time in their lives where they've ever felt calm and in control of their lives. Now, our compassion extends to animals as well. This is really difficult, by the way. If anybody's ever run an animal shelter, it's very tough. We've taken about 1,000 animals a month. We've increased our live release rate from 38% to 75%. We get all kinds of things. So this pig shows up. Now, most of them are dogs and cats, but we were able to place this pig that was found roaming on a local roadway, and it took us 5 days to find a home for her, but being a compassionate city, we found this pig a home with a vegan farmer. Huh? It's very deeply embedded in our community. Lots of our population growth, about half of it comes from internationals in our community. We're building a great international city in the heartland of our country. I'm married to an international myself. In 2010, you might recall, there was a lot of strife in the country. Communities around the country were fighting about mosques being built. USA did a story on this and called Louisville an oasis of calm throughout this national strife. All this work has really changed Louisville. Now, compassion is a part of our community identity rather than just a personal virtue. But I want to emphasize, this is a journey, okay? You don't come and say, well, there's problems in your community. There are problems in our community. Declaring yourself a compassionate community has a downside. I want to warn everybody to that. Now, I got a tweet the other day. Mayor, I got a parking ticket. You're expecting me to pay for it. That's not very compassionate. Okay? So we got to balance all these things. But our compassion journey, which we've been into now for about 4 years, has really helped me realize something important for our country. And that is, we need a rebirth in our country of dialogue, civic dialogue around secular ethics. Values such as love, kindness, compassion, and hospitality. These were frequently discussed 50 years ago or so. But they've gone away from our civic public dialogue as we get into this paralysis in Washington and some of our state houses, and people more concerned about scoring points for themselves rather than uplifting all of our citizenship. So a challenge for all of us here today is more robustly develop a system of secular ethics so that we can rally people around this basic values of goodness that I talked about that we're all born with and that people that identify with. But they just need leaders to help bring them out and show them that this is normal and this is what we should be talking about, not the issues that divide us. The compassionate activities lead to building what I call strong social muscles in your community. They certainly have in Louisville. These social muscles are muscles that are needed when tragedy occurs. And tragedy can happen in any city. And then how people react to it can happen in any way. Look at Ferguson, Missouri, just a couple weeks ago. What you witnessed there is not just the tragedy that initially occurred, but the community's tragic inability to respond together when you saw a total breakdown of the so-called positions of power, mayor, police, with its citizens. That's where social muscles are needed. And then last, innovation. When people talk about innovation, they frequently think about technology or business. But in Louisville, what we've learned is the power of social innovation. Social innovation. That's the cumulative effect of acts of compassion, and the benefits of that cannot be measured. if you look at our balance sheet for the city or for any of your businesses, nonprofits, there's no line item on that balance sheet that addresses compassion or neighborliness. But I would contend that it's our most important asset. So the challenge for all of us now is to continue this brush fire of compassion, city by city, state by state, country by country. So I'm pleased today to be joined by three great mayors. Tom Tate is the mayor of Anaheim, California. Marilyn Strickland is the mayor of Tacoma, Washington. And Ed Lee, the mayor of San Francisco. A year ago, at the annual United States Conference of Mayors meeting, these colleagues and I, along with 300 other mayors in the country, ratified a resolution calling on all cities to explore the use of compassion as a key component to achieving their community's core objectives. So I'd like to thank the mayors for joining us today as the panel discussion starts, and I'll leave you with a famous quote from the Dalai Lama: "If you want others to be happy, be compassionate. If you want to be happy, be compassionate." Thanks, everybody.